I think that probably the biggest cause of frustration and death in DayZ that isn't caused by hackers and bugs is something I'm going to call destination fixation. You might have heard of target fixation, and this is where you're so focused on a threat or objective that you ignore other threats and problems, the threats in your peripheral vision that aren't the target that you need to deal with. If you're driving a vehicle or flying a plane, for example, it can lead to a collision with a target that you're trying to attack or an obstacle that you want to avoid. Basically, staring at the thing we want to avoid a collision with can actually lead to us driving straight into it. Target fixation is something a lot of us do in DayZ, especially when we're hunting down another player, when we're in a gunfight. We get so caught up in it, we forget that there are other players who might get involved, other problems. In contrast, destination fixation is where we choose an objective, such as a military compound on the opposite side of the map, and the temptation is to think only about that goal and head towards it in a straight line, while we treat everything else on the way as an inconvenience instead of a real problem and a challenge to overcome. We take shortcuts, we rush things, and that's because we're fixated on the destination. And this is how you end up looking at that black screen with no warning, and you don't feel like you really did anything wrong or made a mistake. It doesn't feel fair. Meanwhile, it was that choice that you made 20 minutes ago to run through a thoroughfare, high traffic area in the open, fire a shot at a zombie, and that's led to a more patient player following you and waiting for the right moment. To summarize the main difference between these two types of fixation, target fixation is about your short-term approach to a close or visible target, and destination fixation is focusing on a longer-term goal or location without properly addressing the issues you'll have along the way. So what we can do instead is try to keep the end goal in mind, in the back of your mind, and then consciously break down all the problems in front of you, the ones that you have along the way, and solve them one at a time. Take on one task at a time, give it full attention, then move on to the next. It's something that's easy to say, but it's actually hard to do. To take the safest paths, go through safer areas, use concealment, minimize noise and movement. And yes, when you're in the middle of nowhere, it makes more sense to cross an open field and save time instead of walking through the forest and taking twice as long to get there. But especially as you get nearer to the location of interest, you've really got to focus and think about every angle you could be attacked from. And don't let that feeling of frustration creep in that you aren't at your objective yet. Just focus on what's in front of you. On the plus side, the fact that it's such common behavior among other players means that we can take advantage of it and use it to our advantage. Here's a quick example. I'm in a Livonia server. I don't know my way around the map at all, but I am enjoying being lost. I found a sign that said keep out or something to that effect, which leads me to think there's a military base nearby. I don't know exactly where it is or how close I am or the safest approach to it. I'm just seeing a lot of open ground, which makes me uncomfortable, so I want to find some better cover. Now, did you notice that? It was just a few pixels high, but that was a player running along the crest of a hill. He was silhouetted against the sky behind him, which creates the maximum contrast possible, really, between the player and the environment. And this is called skylining. And it's one of those single small errors that can lead to you getting shot in the back of the head. If he didn't have that bright background behind him, if he was moving through, say, a forest, for example, at that distance, I really doubt that I would have seen him. And even this time I wondered if I'd imagined it for a moment. When we see another player running in a straight line through the open like that, they're probably fixated. They probably have a specific destination in mind, and they're totally focused on getting there. So I decide to follow him for a bit and see what happens. We always want to approach other players from outside their field of view. If I get fixated on him and I run towards him in a straight line, I risk entering his field of view. If that happens and he sees me, I've given up control. Instead, I move to the path he's already travelled on to avoid getting in that peripheral vision. And when you move so far behind them, there's a chance that you end up losing sight of them and they can get away. But if you want to live longer, take that chance of losing them instead of intercepting them directly. Once I get near the top of the hill, I can see what his motivation is. It seems like a military compound. Even if I lose line of sight on him now, I know where to find him in the future. Once you've identified their objective, try to position yourself roughly behind them so that you're on the opposite side to their objective, with the player being in the middle. On a side note, if he had a friend who was trailing him, who was following him, and they were leapfrogging or at least staying in some sort of loose formation or bounding past each other, I'd be dead at this point because his friend would be coming up behind me. So that's another thing. You don't have to run in tight groups. Remember, knowing another player's position while concealing your own is the most significant advantage you can have in the game. Luckily for him, I've got nothing but a pistol and I can't do much aside from follow him and try to close the distance and decide what to do from there. Again, I need to position myself outside his field of view, so I want to stand near things that aren't of interest to him, that he's not going to scan as he's moving around, hopefully, anywhere that his line of sight might cut through. He's got a zombie problem, but he seems to be handling it really well. And I'm not going to try to force something to happen. I'm just going to try to wait until he gives me an opportunity. If that doesn't happen and I screw it up, aggro a zombie and get knocked out, by the time I wake up, he leaves the compound and logs out. So my focus was about closing in and getting an angle on this player, and I've neglected the zombie problem. I became a bit too fixated on him myself. Meanwhile, he's running around without any issue, and I can't handle 2 zombies at the same time. He appears to have a better mastery of the current game mechanics than I do at this stage, and honestly, that probably applies to every other player on the server. Boydie can attest to that. He's had to watch me die from starvation while playing with him not too long ago. So I can take that information and focus my energy on the mistakes that I made and what I need to do, which is basically to better familiarise myself with the map and the new game mechanics, which have changed a lot in the half decade since I was really playing a lot. There's another problem that is caused by overfixation, and I think that addressing this is one thing that really increased my survival rate back in the day, and it's something that will never change no matter how much the game changes. I'm going to call this problem Overshoot, and again, we should always aim to approach other players from an unseen angle, and to do that, we determine their focus, which will help a lot in figuring out how to remain outside their field of view. When you're pursuing another player and you lose sight of them, the natural temptation is to continue moving in the same direction you last saw them. The same direction you last saw them moving in, that is. If you can't see them and they've stopped moving, but you're still moving, this is really bad because you're going to overshoot and put yourself in between them and their objective. Now they're behind you, and that's the exact opposite of what you wanted. Overshoot also happens when we're stalking a player based on sound alone, like gunshots for example. By following sounds, we're acting on indirect observation, partial information, and we only get a rough idea of their position. But we can use it to estimate the rough area they might be located in. In this case, overshoot will occur if you move inside that area, because they could be anywhere in it facing any direction. You might see them or they might see you first. You're creating a coin flip scenario. What I recommend is that to avoid this, try to stop outside the boundary of the area you think they might be in and wait for more information. And this is something else that's actually really difficult to do because you're fighting against your natural instincts to keep moving and hunting and pushing, trying to find the other player. If you stop at the boundary and you get some more information, observe something else like another gunshot, you can shrink that circle that they might be located in and then push up again to that new boundary. I also happen to record an example of overshoot on that same server. So I hear gunshots and check my compass so I can move in the right direction even if they stop shooting, because it sounds like they're really far away. As I get closer, I hear more shots. Again, I don't know the map, don't know the area, but it seems like we have the crest of a hill with structures on the other side and a forest on my side. The sound is coming from where the town is, the structures are, so I'm going to approach from the other side of the hill where I can't see into the town, so therefore they can't see me as I'm coming up. If you watched my video from a while ago about looting and movement in dangerous areas, you might be able to identify what I'm looking at right now as the outside area. The hill is a vantage point, and beyond that is the inside area. Inside is the arena where the action is happening, and you're at high risk of being spotted and killed. Where I'm standing outside could also be a thoroughfare into the town, and I could possibly run into someone even out here. But I'm at the point in this gaming session where I need to log off soon, and I may not get to play again for weeks, so I decide to take some risks. But otherwise I should be trying to gather more information before pushing into that circle we were talking about. Instead, I move to what appears to be one of the main vantage points to the town, which oversees a large area. There's a problem with this. If I can see all that area, it can see me. Then I push my luck a bit further and I run across an exposed area, completely exposed, to reach another big vantage point. And this is where I get spotted and taken out. And this really doesn't bother me that much because I know what I did wrong, I accept it was my fault, and I know that it's something I can change next time. It's just another problem to solve. It's not the player's fault that he decided to shoot me on sight. It's his decision on how he wants to play the game. So that's just a tip for enjoying this game more. If you keep getting slaughtered in the game and it's really bothering you, you can take some control back by turning your focus inward on what you can improve and how you approach things. Don't waste your mental and emotional energy on all the things that you can't change. Think about what you can change. So I've had a couple of failures here, but I'll try to get some more time in the game and get a better example for you of where I don't overshoot and I manage things a bit better. In the meantime, I suggest that what you can do when you're watching other players who literally have tens of thousands of hours, many years of experience in the game, just really try to analyze what they're doing with what I've been talking about. Forget about their pure skill level for a moment and look out for the things that they're doing that you can apply to your game. And also remember, they need to produce exciting content which pushes them into situations that you might find extremely difficult to pull off, and it's not going to work out the same way for you. So let's watch the Running Man do his thing in his most recent video and track another player based on sound and see how he avoids overshooting, what he does when he gets up to the boundary of the other player's location.
Now the law of DayZ is that the second they get nearby, the shots will stop. Yeah.
So he literally just complained about other players going silent, which would prevent him from recalibrating and narrowing down that player's position. But he does manage to narrow it down to a particular building. He's got a reasonable suspicion that he's in there, so he pushes in, gets pretty close, and attempts to shoot a grenade through the window, which doesn't work. Then he clears the structure, and it looks like he's only just missed this player. He would have been there not very long ago. But now the Running Man has given away his own position with that explosion. So he's really in a bad way now.
Oh my god, that was not smart.
But he still manages to dominate with some excellent fundamental skills. He's slicing the pie, moving laterally, getting off the X, resets, and this other player's dumb enough to push into the structure where Running Man has elevation. Also just great management of those janky input mechanics before this idiot obviously cheats and ends the game.
Oh,
I hope that helps a bit. These are methods that I actually started using fairly early when I was playing the mod many years ago, and I'll try to capture a better example of my own footage at some point in the future.